So, this is an episode that I haven't actually seen before. It's called 30 Minutes Afternoon.
Did you enjoy it?
Oh, I enjoyed it a lot, yeah. It's a very creative, very different episode. Essentially, it's about this gang who have found a way to implicate their own victims in their own crimes. Essentially, what they do, in the first half, they kidnapped this office worker named Prescott, and they fasten this very nifty remote wrist bomb to his hand that will explode in a select amount of time, and the key is in his office. So essentially he has to go to his office, unhook the wrist device, drop it in the files, and then get out of there and bolt it before it explodes.
This is kind of an interesting take on terrorism, because it takes the suicide bomber, but you're actually turning a victim into a suicide bomber.
Yeah.
Because it'll take the blame away completely from the terrorist organisation. Think about it, if the guy survives, even if he does, because they're probably not counting on it, they'll say, oh yeah, some guy came up to me in the street and gave me this wrist bomb. Police will never believe him, will they?
It's an absolutely crazy alibi. But, funny enough, Prescott does manage to get out alive with the assistance of international rescue and a very inventive new device that manages to lift an entire elevator back out of the shaft. So Prescott gets out alive, and the police do just that. They believe his story, purely because he's got such a squeaky clean record that they can't possibly think he would just out of nowhere, on his third wedding anniversary, just decide to blow up a building.
And this is when it turns more into like an espionage story rather than just a story of a rescue, because then you see them publishing this fake article that the man has died. International Rescue couldn't save him. Now this might be a bit of a bad rep for International Rescue, but as Jeff Tracy says, it's mostly to do with the FBI or so. They're trying to stop these victims in their tracks, these men in their tracks, because they are making them think that they were successful.
Yeah. I mean, that's something else that's interesting. One thing I noticed when I was watching the introduction, all of the introductions to Thunderbirds have these quick flashes, these quick preview 3-second clips of stuff that will happen in the episode, and one of them is the headline that Prescott has died. So it briefly fooled me into thinking, oh god, International Rescue actually don't save someone. But in fact it's a fake newspaper article, so it's very cleverly teasing someone. That's how trailers should work, really. They should mislead you and send you in the wrong direction.
What I enjoy about those trailers at the beginning is you know what to expect. You think, oh, I wonder what's going to lead to that and that and that. So it looks like we got some action going on here. So then that's when we end up with the second act of the story, because this is kind of like a 2-act bit.
Yeah, what's really creative about this episode is it doesn't follow the general Thunderbirds linear storytelling narrative, where they establish something, put it in peril, and then have International Rescue come and save it. This is very much 2 separate acts. One of them is saving Prescott from the aftermath of his terrorist attack, and the second one deals with a secret agent who also gets involved in a similar kind of terrorist attack.
And they're sitting on what turns out to be, in the words of the man behind the Secret Service, an explosion that will destroy half of England. And then you get the understatement of the year from John Tracy.
One of our agents is sitting on a nuclear explosion that will destroy half of England. Wow-wee, that's serious.
So we're sitting pretty much on a bomb that would pretty much rival Hiroshima and Nagasaki put together, and so all John can say is wow-wee, but...
Oh, gee whiz!
But then again, you know, this was the 60s, so, you know, what is a 60s kid going to say when he's told, yeah, your country's going to go to hell?
Especially an all-American blonde one like John.
Yeah, and I mean, this was after the Cuban Missile Crisis, so I guess, you know, most people were kind of used to saying that the bombs are going to be dropped or something. This was the middle of the Cold War anyway, so... But anyway, back to the story, and we've got Southern. That's how he's simply known as. We don't really know his name, it's just Southern. And he's a British agent, as we know from the stock footage of Big Ben chiming, and of an interesting, quirky introduction to the guys in MI5 or MI6, whichever one of the Secret Service it is. And then we end up with him taking off with these other guys, are members of the same gang, with the same wrist bombs attached to them, and he ends up at the plutonium dump, which has some pretty quirky robots.
Yeah, that's one of the things as well. They're getting really creative now. They don't only just have puppet humans, but these really nifty little C-3PO-esque puppet robots that guard the plutonium plant. But he's able to take them out quite easily with a ray gun. Very sci-fi indeed. It's this nifty little gun that's tuned to their frequency so that they just drop like a limp fish.
Yes, except he misses one of them out, and that is a bit of a bummer, really, because it comes back to haunt him, and so the things start to go awry when he thinks he's foiled the plot.
Don't you find it ironic that the secret in this situation, it's the secret agent, the James Bond-esque type that's caught monologuing, rather than, why don't you just apprehend them already?
Yeah.
And that turns out to be his downfall. It's this time the tables are turned. It's the secret agent who's caught monologuing.
It's kind of a twist on the typical, master criminal who loves the sound of his own voice. This guy obviously loves
he
his
was
own
caught
voice.
Bond villaining, basically.
It's kind of like if Bond got a bit too drunk with power, Yeah, but still, then again, we bring in international rescue. Scott and Virgil come in, and they bring in this piece of equipment, which looks like the mortar used in Edge of Impact.
And this time it's a focused laser drill, I guess.
A laser.
Laser.
So anyway, we come in, and we actually see, I think this is the first time we actually see Scott taking physically part, or an active part, in a rescue. He's not sitting there with his mobile control.
Yeah, that's right. He even gets the bombs out of there, and what I was very much reminded of the end of The Dark Knight Rises. He basically pulls a Batman, gets the bombs in his hand, throws them into his plane. He's like, I can get it out over the bay. And he flies them over and just drops them in the water. Scott is essentially Batman in this.
The good thing it wasn't The Dark Knight Rises. Imagine if it was the Batman of the time. I mean, Adam West, or some days you just can't get rid of a bomb.
I would love to see an episode of Scott Tracy, little puppet Scott Tracy flailing around like, some days you just can't get rid of a bomb.
I wonder who this episode really belongs to, because each episode in its own right, dealing with the nature of the rescue, belongs to a particular character. I don't really think this one actually belongs to a particular one character.
No, this one focuses more on the actual people in distress than it does the characters of International Rescue. There's never really someone who is highlighted, except maybe Scott at the end. But
or even maybe Lady Penelope. Because
Lady Penelope returns in this episode, helping to apprehend the gang who are responsible for these terrorist attacks.
And because she's dealing with a secret agent, and because Penelope herself is a secret agent, I think what makes this... what kind of confused me about this episode was that the leader of this gang behind it, whose face you never see, does sound slightly similar to the Hood, not completely, sounds more Russian. But because you never see his face, I wonder if he at all is... I know there's an episode later on where the Hood is constantly in contact with this leader, or like a general, and you never see his face, so I wonder if it's the same person.
Do you think it's the same general from Edge of Impact?
Who knows? But, I mean, we saw his face, so what's the point in hiding his face again?
Yeah, perhaps you're right. And he only really had to put vendetta against Red Arrows, I guess.
And he didn't quite like the Hood at the end of it, so I doubt he'd hire him again.
Yeah, made a fool of himself driving off that bridge. What did you think of the sets in this?
I really quite liked it, because this one takes place firstly in what looks like downtown New York City. It's meant to be they call it, is it
I can't
Stoke
remember
City
the name.
or Stork City? It's something fictional.
Stokey City or something like that.
Something like that. But I liked I liked how detailed the set design was, because you see this later on in a lot of other episodes. It's a little bit like Terror in New York, so I guess they use the same set.
But it's like street level. You got cars and you got street lights. You got some billboards on the wall, and you got that couple watching TV in the beginning. With
there's some pretty good jokes as well when Fab One is driving across England, and it's going straight ahead by any means necessary. There's a joke with it crashing through a gate and the sign saying, "Please shut the gate."
And the castle's a really good design as well. I think that's the first time we've really seen something like a castle in Thunderbirds, and the plutonium plant as well. Really good set design, and the C-3PO-esque robots.
So yeah, it's quite a diverse episode with things like set design and story or so. So yeah, this was a really memorable. I certainly remember watching it a lot as a kid. It was a personal favourite of mine. So
from a lot of Thunderbirds episodes I've seen, this one is certainly very creative in terms of the difference in narrative and the motivation of the villains. I gotta hand it to the villains in this. It's a very clever way to get people to commit terrorist acts and have you just get off scot-free.
So yeah, I just wonder if any terrorists ever watched this episode of Thunderbirds growing up and thought, maybe when I grow up and bomb someone I could use something like this. But I beg to differ. I mean, just if any big Thunderbird fan ends up getting radicalised somehow, you don't think...
Nah.
No.
They're too innocent.
Too innocent, yeah.
They're children at heart.
Yeah.
But anyway, this was a fantastic episode, so tune in for the next one, which I can't remember what it is, but I think it's another one I haven't seen.
FAB.
FAB.